Adetola was once a bright young woman, a university student with dreams of becoming a lawyer. Her future looked promising until life dealt her a cruel hand. She fell in love with a young man who whispered promises of forever but fled the moment she got pregnant. Her family, ashamed, turned their backs on her. The lecture halls she once filled with ambition became distant memories as she traded textbooks for baby diapers. She carried her shame alone, raising her son in a small, single room in the slums. The walls leaked when it rained, and the floor was nothing but cracked cement. She whispered to her child at night, "Mama is here. I will never leave you." But each dawn came with the same question: how to survive another day. Life in the city was unforgiving. Adetola hawked pure water under the scorching Lagos sun, weaving between buses and shouting voices at the motor park. The few coins she made fed her child, though sometimes she went to bed hungry just to keep him full. Neighbors would whisper about her. Such a waste. She was once brilliant. But she didn't care. She was determined to shield her son from hunger, even if it meant sacrificing her own body and pride. Her life grew harder when she gave birth to two more boys from short lived relationships that ended the same way, men vanishing at the first sign of responsibility. The boys grew up knowing only her as father and mother, the one constant in their fragile world. She scrubbed floors as a house help, worked long hours in markets, and sometimes collapsed at night from sheer exhaustion. But no matter the struggle, she held her children close, promising them a better tomorrow, even when she had no idea how to provide it. When her eldest son, Kunle, reached secondary school age, Adetola made the hardest decision of her life. She could not afford to send all three boys to school, so she chose him. "You will carry our hope," she told him, pressing a small Bible into his hand. The younger brothers, Seyi and Damila, watched silently as their mother sewed her clothes, her wedding ring, and even skipped meals just to buy Kunle's books and uniform. Their hearts ached, but they did not complain. They knew their mother's sacrifice was for them all. Days turned into years of survival. They lived in a cramped one-room apartment with a torn curtain dividing the sleeping space. Dinner was often gari soaked in water, sometimes without sugar. Yet the boys would laugh, trying to hide their hunger so their mother wouldn't cry. At night, Adetola prayed aloud, "Lord, don't let my boys suffer the way I have." Tears slipped quietly down her face as her children pretended to sleep, listening to every word. Kunle excelled in school. He was sharp, ambitious, and determined not to waste his mother's sacrifice. Teachers praised him, saying he had the mind of a future leader. Each time he brought home good grades, Adetola's weary face lit up. But Seyi and Damila, though intelligent, roamed the streets after helping their mother at home. They watched their brother wear his school uniform with pride, while they carried trays of sachet water on their heads. Silent envy and guilt brewed in their young hearts. One evening, after a long day of hawking and cleaning, Adetola fainted in front of her sons. Panic filled the room as they rushed to lift her frail body. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes weak. The doctor's words the next day were like a blade. "She needs urgent surgery or she won't survive." The amount required was far beyond anything they had ever seen. It was not just expensive, it was impossible. The boys sat in silence that night, the sound of their mother's labored breathing breaking their hearts. Kunle wept in private, torn between helplessness and rage. "After all she has done for us, are we just going to watch her die?" he whispered to his brothers. They had no relatives to turn to, no savings, no one to help. The world had abandoned them. Damila clenched his fists. "If money is what they want, then we will find it, no matter how." His words hung heavy in the air. a dangerous thought born out of love and despair. It started as a whisper, a crazy idea they laughed off at first, but as their mother's health worsened, desperation made it real. The boys decided to rob a bank, not for wealth, not for luxury, but to save the only person who had ever sacrificed for them. That night, as rain poured heavily outside, they sat in darkness planning. Their faces were hardened by pain, but their hearts burned with love. Mama will live, Kunle vowed, even if it meant losing himself. They began to study the bank near the market. Days of watching, memorizing the guards' routines, and sketching escape routes. It was a dangerous mission, but to them, death was better than watching their mother die slowly. Say, the youngest, trembled with fear. What if we fail? He asked. Kunle placed a hand on his shoulder. Mama didn't fail us. We cannot fail her. Those words sealed their fate. The night before the heist, the boys sat beside their mother's bed. She smiled faintly, whispering, My children, my joy. They swallowed their tears, hiding the storm inside them. She had no idea what they planned. They held her hands and prayed together, asking God for strength, but in their hearts, they were asking for courage to do the unthinkable. At dawn, the boys set their plan in motion. Disguised in cheap masks and holding locally made guns, their hearts pounded as they stormed into the small bank. Screams filled the air as customers ducked under tables. The boys shouted for everyone to stay down. Kunle's voice shook as he demanded money from the terrified cashier. He wasn't a criminal, but love made him one. As the money was pushed into their bag, Say's hands trembled violently. He saw fear in the eyes of a little girl clinging to her mother, and his heart broke. This wasn't who they were. They weren't monsters. But then he remembered his mother, pale and weak, her chest rising slowly as she fought for life. His tears fell inside the mask. Just as they prepared to escape, the wail of sirens pierced the air. Panic erupted. Someone had triggered the alarm. The boys' hearts raced as police vehicles screeched to a halt outside. They were trapped between life, death, and prison. For the first time, fear outweighed courage. Kunle shouted, We can't fail, Mama, as chaos consumed the bank. Back home, unaware of what her children were doing, Adetola whispered prayers for her boys. Lord, keep them safe. Don't let them be consumed by this wicked world. She clutched her old Bible, tears staining its worn pages. Her frail body shivered under the weight of her sickness, but her heart beat with faith that her children would find a way. The boys fired into the air, forcing their way out. The streets exploded in chaos, people running, police chasing. Damila was hit by a bullet grazing his arm, but he pushed forward. They ducked into narrow alleys, their lungs burning, clutching the bag of money. Kunle's mind raced. If we die today, at least Mama will know we tried. As they neared their hideout, police surrounded them. Trapped, they exchanged terrified glances. They thought of their mother, her smile, her struggles. Tears mixed with sweat as Conley raised his hands, but before they could surrender, a shot rang out. Sei collapsed to the ground, blood staining his shirt. The youngest, the most innocent, was gone in an instant. The surviving brothers screamed in agony as police pinned them down. The bag of money spilled across the ground, bills flying in the wind like cruel reminders of their failed sacrifice. Crowds gathered, some pitying, others condemning. Kunle cried out, We only wanted to save our mother. But his voice was drowned by sirens and handcuffs. When news reached Adetola, she broke. She wailed, a voice echoing through the slum. My children, my children. Her frail body shook violently as neighbors held her. The same society that had ignored her suffering now judged her children as criminals. She clutched her chest, her heart heavy with grief, realizing the price her children had paid for love. At Say's funeral, People whispered, thieves, criminals, but others wept, seeing the truth. These were children of circumstance, victims of poverty, of a world that had abandoned them. The story of three boys who robbed a bank not out of greed, but out of love, left a scar on the community, and a haunting question remained. When desperation drives love into crime, who is truly guilty? The children or the society that forced their hands? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Until next time, bye.